Hey fellow boaters, meet Dockside Pros, the premier maritime and yachting directory to connect you with trusted experts for all services on and around the water. We've partnered with hundreds of the most respected and genuine companies, including Towboat US, New Coast Finance, The Keys Company, Elite Marine Surveyors, Barnacle King, and Fish Headquarters. We also feature a curated maritime marketplace with the best dock accessories, boat gear, marine electronics, and fishing equipment on the market. Our extensive network of vetted boat dealers and top waterfront realtors will help make your dockside dreams a reality. For free VIP concierge support for anything from repairs, maintenance, docks, charters, or sales, visit docksidepros.com today and come meet us at the upcoming boat shows.
I have been looking forward to this day for a long time. We're sitting with past and current presidents of YPY, Young Professionals in Yachting. So, John, Katie, thanks for coming on board.
Thanks, Rick.
We've got DJ calling us in from, what part of Texas are you in right now?
I'm in Dallas, Rick.
Dallas. So DJ Kiernan from Dallas, he's the founder. He's the guy that started this thing. So yeah, let's go with this and have some fun. I talk about this organization a lot on my podcast. So those that follow and listen have heard me talk about YPY in the past. And it's usually with just a little bit of jealousy baked in, because when I started in this industry, there was no such thing. We had to figure it out ourselves. And I've always said this is an industry of people and relationships and networking. And, you know, almost 40 years ago when I came into the business, you had to figure it out on your own. And now YPY came along. DJ, how long ago did you start this organization?
15 years ago, Rick.
15 years.
30 years old.
Wow. So there you go. So 15 years ago, this organization comes along and gives everybody that wants that leg up. I think that's fantastic. Congratulations. So let's start with you, DJ, because, you know, every idea, every organization, every business has a genesis, a starting point. What was that for you? How did you come up with YPY? What did that look like?
Well, thank you, Rick. I mean, I think that leadership has always been sort of a theme in my life. And, you know, I became an Eagle Scout and was an elder in the Presbyterian Church at the age of 17, which is kind of odd. And, you know, captain of my swim team in high school. And actually, I was the president of the Student Association for my college at Niagara University. And so that was sort of my first big association moment. And actually, when I moved to Fort Lauderdale, I was actually a sales manager at the convention center right there on the Intercoastal. And I was responsible for, among other things, the Southeast Association market. So a lot of the state associations out of Tallahassee, for example, were my clients. So I had a good understanding of what an association could bring in terms of value to an industry. And I have to tell you, it was initially a little bit selfish because I had to talk my way in to the yachting industry. And Merle Wood gave me my start. And I went to Fedship from there. And the selfish aspect of it is that once I got to Fedship, and it was just me and, you know, the Dutch guys, basically. I was at Fedship America, obviously, with 2 other employees.
Yep.
And I went from Merle Wood to Fedship, and I felt like, wow, I'm kind of on an island here, and I don't have that sort of like brokerage-based networking and information sharing and everything else that comes along with it. And I just started the charter division for Fedship, which quite frankly, I wasn't qualified for at the time, but I really got lucky with that opportunity. And I thought I better figure out a way that us young folk can sort of get together and support each other.
This industry can be intimidating a little bit, can it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, when we got started, you know, when we were finally really moving, I remember that Terry Hines, the legendary Terry Hines, made a post on the MEBA board about these young kids that had started up their own association. And I thought, okay, well, we've arrived.
Yes, apparently so. So that was that realization that you were kind of feeling a little bit in over your head, which is, by the way, a great way to grow in your career, is to stretch a little bit and to be uncomfortable. But you found the potential of bringing some comfort in by creating an organization that brought people together.
That's right. I remember sitting at the fire pit at YOLO on Las Olas and talking to Kyle Schmidt, and at the time, Clancy Weller, now McDonald, and just thinking with them about what their thoughts were about my little idea, and they loved it. And we got about 12, 15 people together that founded like YPY together as like the core group. And, I want to do some name dropping here, Rick. We had Bob Saxon as a huge supporter in the early days, leading a couple workshops for us. And AJ Anderson of WMG was one of our first guest speakers. And of course, the guys like Francois Benuel and Dick Van Lent and Hank DeVries at Fedship were so supportive.
You just named off some serious A-listers and maybe not ironically good friends of mine in this industry. That's remarkable. These are really good guys who have only ever had the best intent for our industry. So you surrounded yourself with superstars.
Yeah, they came in and did guest speaking situations, workshops. And, for me, like I said before, separate from this podcast, ultimately, I was really focused on personal and professional development with regards to the goals of the association. I knew that the networking and social aspects would take care of themselves.
Sure. This is an industry that's good at that.
Absolutely.
So there's a segue here. I want to kind of bring John into the conversation. John Jarvie here. You and I were talking earlier, and you said basically about the time you felt like you started getting the wheels under yourself here with the program, your business drug you across the pond to Monaco.
It did for DJ, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. I had a interesting way in. I moved here in 2009. I was 22, and I didn't know a soul here, of course. Came from San Diego. And first thing I did is I started knocking on doors to try to go solicit yacht insurance. And those doors were mostly never opened, if not slammed quickly in my face. I was a child trying to be successful in a game.
Door-to-door sales,
yes.
Insurance sales guy.
I figured that's how I'd started out here. And I met a young lady, Sarah Ingersoll, who introduced me to the idea of YPY. That same day I came back to my office, which is at the Bahia Mark. Coincidentally, my next door neighbor was DJ Kiernan. So while I'm walking back to the office, DJ pops his head out, introduces himself, and says, "Have you heard about this group called YPY?" And I said, "Yeah, about 20 minutes ago." And he said, "You're going to come with me tonight. We have an event." And that was kind of my entrance into the group. DJ invited me to be on the board. If you remember DJ, I was the events director with Katie Barron-Noman back then. And then ultimately stepped up to be vice president with Ryan Rabatin. Remember the old days. And then we were going for probably 6, 8, 9 months before DJ got a knock on a door with a really big opportunity to bring him over to Monaco.
And so obviously being relocated, 3,000 miles away made it difficult to stay, tenaciously on what he started here in South Florida.
Yeah.
And you took the reins.
Yeah, it was an interesting moment in time because DJ had helped to create this great organization, great group of people, and with some tradition, right? They would meet a few times a month. Back then it was at the Point of the Americas building. Was that John Weller's donation? Yeah, back then. But when DJ left, it happened so suddenly that we didn't really make a plan. We didn't necessarily talk it through, but we had some ideas about what would happen. And so I actually wasn't voted in as president. I just said, "Hey, I want to see this organization keep going, keep growing." And so I just kind of stepped in as president. And at the time, DJ's original founding board kind of all retired when DJ went to Monaco. And so we had to get a brand new board and kind of keep the wheels on. But we only changed a few basic things. We increased the dues slightly, I think from $50 to $75 or $100, something little. And we made our meetings a little bit more regular on a monthly basis, switched them off between professional development and industry speakers, which were traditions that DJ had already started. And everyone told me I was silly for investing any time or energy into this in those early days. But we were all children.
Well, that's all right. That's the best time to start learning. So as the new president, what kind of hurdles or obstacles do you have to get through to really, get this organization to the next level, essentially established?
The first thing that I realized was, as much as we were supported by a lot of the names that DJ shared, we weren't really taken seriously by what I would consider to be our peers, MIASF, FYBA at the time, now IYBA, and the other associations who I considered to be peers of YPY. And although many of their members would come and speak and support us, we were, I don't want to say looked down on, but we were looked at as a bunch of kids, a drinking and dating club. And so how can we help to push this more towards everyone viewing us, maybe not totally as peers, but as a professional organization that is here for the right reasons?
No question.
So we put a lot of initiative on that and eventually started to win over these other associations that eventually said, hey, how do we collaborate? How do we do things together? And that was a big step for us.
Well, John, not that I want to validate what you just said, but where'd you meet your wife?
I met my wife in YPY. Not that it's a drinking or dating organization.
No, we wouldn't go there.
But it certainly helped. She tells the story of seeing me up there speaking at one of the meetings as president, and she kind of stalked me down, and I have YPY to thank for that.
There you go.
She's amazing. And there have been some other marriages that have occurred as a result of YPY as well. But no, that's not the purpose of the organization, of course. But we work in yachting. There's a lot of nice people, a lot of beautiful people, and relationships happen sometimes.
So they do. So I'd be remiss not to introduce Katie Hagan here too. She's the current president of YPY. And you took this on at the same time you took on the role as a brand new mom.
Yes.
Wowee.
Yeah.
You just love the multitasking and all and you run your own business.
Yes. So,
How about that?
Yeah.
Remarkable. So talk to us, Katie. What's it like to be the president currently of YPY?
So I think it's grown a lot and changed a lot, I think, from DJ's years and John, and hearing about that. It's really interesting to see how it's evolved. But the board now is about 11 board members. We just actually introduced a new role this year. Because of those 15 years, we have a huge alumni base. So that's one of the things that we've decided that I think really makes a lot of sense for us as an organization to keep those relationships really strong, is to reconnect with the alumni that have aged out at 40. So Julia Russell is now our alumni director.
All right.
So she's taking on that and championing that very new role and kind of building that base and reconnecting with DJ and the former presidents to kind of find the folks that maybe have moved on in their careers or maybe different parts of the world, which is really interesting.
Isn't it though?
But yeah, I mean, the organization, I think we have such a great foundation from what DJ and John built. And I think it's interesting that you've had to earn, the reputation. And now I think my task is maintaining it and trying to build upon it, which is a tough job, I think. But they've raised the stakes. I mean, every year, we improve, we find new things, we integrate better, we work with a lot of those associations that you had to work hard to put yourself in the same ranks. And now it's we're trying to find ways to collaborate with MISF or US Super Yacht Association or IYBA. So there's a lot of, I think, collaboration happening in the industry.
I love that. I used to have this moniker that, I was the collaborator, only because I constantly try to educate people that in an industry like this particularly, that's the best way to scale oftentimes. So what do you see YPY bringing, Katie's value to the industry?
Yeah. Well, I think so YPY is for folks under the age of 40. So it's a great opportunity for anyone that's new to the industry as an entry-level person to immediately have a network and a professional group of friends, really. So for myself, when I moved down to South Florida, I'm an entrepreneur, I had no book of business, and we didn't know anyone down here. I wasn't a native from South Florida at all. And it was actually a US Super Yacht Association event. I bumped into a few of the YPY alums, Andrew Cohen, and he's
Andrew's
listen,
good guy.
He's like, listen, you have to connect with YPY. And I didn't realize at the time what that would do for us, but I mean, really it was an instant friend group. And once you have that level of comfort and trust, then it's business takes off from there too. So I mean, from a person that's looking to start in this industry, this is the network for young people to get involved in, for sure.
I've heard you guys say twice, age out at 40. When do you age in? How old do you have to be to come in?
That's a good question.
22.
22. But we're not a drinking organization. or dating. Just testing those waters a little bit. Okay.
22. We have shifted those ages over the years. When I joined, the max was 35. And it was actually when we expanded to Europe that we raised that, because the average age of a young professional in Europe was actually older.
There you go. Okay.
And there's been many pushes for members to increase it to 42 and 45.
Of course, because they see what's coming their way, right? I've got a solution for that. We'll talk about that later. No, it's interesting because ISS, International Superyacht Society, has something they call the Promise Keepers Promises, which talks about bringing in young people into the industry. And as you guys know, that my youngest son, Tristan, is behind the cameras in the sound system of Yachting International Radio here in the United States. He does all of our podcasts with Yachting USA, which is this podcast, as well as the podcast Kim Sweers and I do, Yachting Unplugged. So we've got a young guy coming in here, but he's only about to turn 16. So he's still got to be patient. He's got another 6 years before he can sign up, huh?
We've never been lobbied to lower the entry age, but we can talk about it.
That's interesting.
No, it's fun though, because, this is a demographic of professionals, and it probably makes sense because by the time you're, coming into a career, I was probably, when I started my maritime career, I was 19 years old. But when I left the turning the wrenches part offshore and coming onto the beach and actually, getting involved in the business, I was closer to 24, 25. So, I think that's probably the sweet spots, in the early 20s to 40.
Yeah.
And I'm just mentioning this so that people listening to this conversation kind of get an idea where they fit into all of this. Because if you are a young person and you want to figure out how to, get involved in this industry or find a way to scale or become more successful in this industry, the organization seems ideal for that.
Yeah.
And it's not intended to be utilized for enhancing your career, but it is a byproduct of YPY. Many of our members have started their own businesses after what they've learned in the organization, but others, and I think part of the industry utilizes YPY as almost a job board of we're looking for a X employee. Do you guys have one available? We're hiring, and they kind of go there first. But there's been plenty of members that have kind of climbed the ladder because of opportunities that have come from YPY.
I love that. Now, DJ, earlier you were talking about some people I know pretty well that have been involved in, we'll call it, speaking engagements. Who else have you had come on board to talk to the membership? And I guess this actually goes out to not just you, DJ, but John and Katie. When you introduce your members to the industry, who are you looking for? Who have you brought onto stage, so to speak, to talk about their businesses and their experiences?
Yeah, if I could go first, and then I'll turn it over to Katie and John because they've got quite a few names to rattle off. I will just say for fun, because I am out in Dallas doing a master's degree in leadership and organizational development, and I'm doing coaching and consulting remotely while I'm out here. And actually my primary consulting client is Dennison Yachting. It's really fun for me to see that Bob Dennison himself will be one of the next big speakers at YPY Fort Lauderdale.
That's great. So, he's a great voice.
That's right.
Bob was one of the few people. He was one of the few people. We've had 3 members who were actually presenters. If you remember, Mike Antile spoke when he was with Marine Industries Association of Palm Beach. Tim Hamilton and Bob Dennison were the only 3 existing members who actually were presenters. Usually they're people that have been in the industry for longer, but I would bet this is Bob's 8th or 10th time in front of the group.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. That's great. That's give back too. And I liked recognizing that because, it's important to, particularly when you become successful, and it's hard to say who's been any more successful than Bob Dennison has been, to then take that experience and then share it and scale it. And, something that I point out to a lot of young people that I talk to is when asked, how do you get successful in this industry, in this business, I tell people to show up. And when you show up and you get in front of people like Bob Dennison or Bob Saxon, am I missing any Bobs here? Bobby Russioli would have been a good one.
Yeah.
You learned
He was
something.
a speaker.
Yeah, I know. It was, that's profound.
Can you think of any others?
Yeah, besides just even outside the industry, we've had Bob Saxon speak, but I think one of the things we've done as we've grown as an organization too is bring in the component of civic engagement and civic responsibility. So earlier this year, we had, as hosted at MISF, we had Ben Sorensen, who I think is a good friend of DJ, am I correct? That's
Yeah,
right.
good
Yeah,
friend.
our district commissioner came and spoke with us about state of the industry and how he's advocating for us in the maritime industry, marine industry down here. And then we've also had like guest speakers from Piper's Angels. So we actually had the founder come speak again recently. I think that was in April. If I
Yeah,
recall,
Travis
as
Seward,
director.
a friend of mine. And of
Yeah.
course, you had Rick Thomas speak to the group
Yes.
2 years
Yes.
ago, right before we did would have been my second crossing.
Yeah.
And that was a wonderful experience to be
Yes.
up there. I was there with Seakeepers
Yes.
Society, and we had a standing room only group.
Yeah,
You know,
Seafarers House. Yeah,
that
that's
was
right.
Seafarers House. It was amazing. So no, you've definitely done a good job of bringing people to the table to bring value to your membership for sure. And that was why I would say you are absolutely on a peer level with organizations like ISS and USSA and MIASF, and then the other combination of 4 or 5 letters I can come up with that resonate in our industry. You've definitely arrived.
Rick, it's interesting we keep talking about these other associations because I get a lot of personal satisfaction. I mean, if you think about the ISS, I'm a member of the board of the ISS. I'm on the talent pledge committee that you mentioned just a couple minutes ago. But Maggie McDonald, as the only full-time employee, working under Vanessa,
Yeah.
She's someone I personally brought into the industry. I knew her aunt and uncle before I ever knew Maggie.
I just learned something. I love that.
She was secretary,
Yeah.
DJ, when I was president.
That's right. And she was a YPY member of the year, and now she's helping Vanessa run the ISS. And of course, I was just dealing with Zach Savage, a board member of the USSA, as a member myself of the USSA, and we were talking about the good old days of YPY. So you can see that whether it's on the board or even in these paid positions, you have a lot of former YPY stars that have gone on to the other bigger associations in the industry.
That's a beautiful thing. Something else that I think is worth mentioning, you guys put together mentorship programs.
Yep.
I know that because I've actually participated in that, and I find it a remarkable gift, if you will, to members of YPY that will take advantage of that opportunity to get put in front of other industry professionals and actually be mentored, which, again, kudos to the organization for making that available to your members.
Yeah. I think we have a strong network too for that. So that's kind of part of the idea behind, reaching back out to the alumni is that they've gone through this process. They know what it takes. They maybe themselves started as an entry level in the industry, and now they're in senior most positions or decision makers in their current companies. So it's nice to then have that connection to give back and then connect with current membership. But the pool and talent that we have for membership or for mentorship is really impressive, and it's a unique opportunity because it's not just they mentor a bunch of people. It's a one-on-one relationship that stays with you for years. So like my business mentor is Bob Saxon actually.
You can't do much better than that.
You definitely can't do much better than that. And but we've it's far beyond just a professional relationship. It's invited him to our wedding. So
That's
it
cool.
really, I think those kind of connections are deep and they are lifelong. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve with the mentorship program. Is it's not just a one-off. It's not just a one-time coffee, but someone that they feel like they can have a confidant in the industry, and wherever their career takes them or whatever they're doing in life, they still have that connection. And I know you've been really successful at that as well with your mentees.
That didn't start in my term. That was when James Maitland was president. His board put that together in about 2016. And and Drew Orvieto and I are still good friends because of that.
Yeah.
So how about that? Katie, how long have you been in the organization now?
So I came on, I think, the 2018. Yeah, 2018. So it's been a few years. So it's interesting to see how quickly things have changed. And the funny thing, I was reflecting with my current board is when I came on, I wasn't even a voting, board member when I first joined the board. So things have changed and the responsibilities have grown and altered and the number of positions on the board has expanded. But yeah, it's gone by fast, actually. I mean, most of my time was during COVID. So, that was under Stephanie Piddington, her board. And we did the best we could, and a lot of it was online, but we still, continued that tradition of having a member meeting once a month, and we did it via Zoom, and we learned how to just make the best of it. And yeah, it's an interesting time for sure.
That. So looking back over the last 7 years, could you point out one or two things that YPY brought to you that you didn't expect or didn't see coming?
Ooh. Probably for me, the mentorship. I think, with Bob as a mentor, I think that for me, it's nice as a fellow entrepreneur, he's an entrepreneur, to have someone that you can like SOS and say, hey, I really need some guidance, and have that friendship. So I think for me, that's been really a huge, I think, asset. And I really encourage anybody in YPY that isn't already hooked up with the mentorship program to do that, because those lifelong friendships, whatever happens, outside the business or industry, like having that friendship, I think, is really important.
It's all about relationships, really, at the end of the day. I see it in every facet of this industry. You just have to open your eyes to it. And these relationships become friendships, become very good friendships that really scale. So that's super important. John, I want to go back to you because it occurred to me, DJ bailed on you, went to Monaco. And you're
Not how I say it, DJ.
But you take this thing. But I've come to understand that, YPY is just not a South Florida gig. It's not just a U.S. gig. It's an organization that's worldwide now. How do you go about setting up chapters in other parts of the world where our industry does business? What does that look like?
Well, to DJ's credit, the idea for expanding it first to Monaco was something that DJ and I always talked about. And the young lady who started that for us, Marcella Royer, she's still very active in the yachting community in Monaco. But that was an idea that DJ and I had bounced around. And so I was under the impression that eventually, over enough time, each yachting hub is going to create this on their own. It's going to happen organically. So why not help it happen? We already have a model, and let's see if anyone is interested. And so I approached Marcella. She and I worked together for several months, went through the Monaco Yacht Show, and kind of developed this template and kind of roadmap to follow. And we went after the idea of starting YPY Monaco. The initial goal was Monaco, London, Netherlands, USA. Never any vision beyond that. But the issue we had in Monaco was the large houses, the large brokerage houses. Not only did they not want anything to do with an American organization, they said, we can start our own. So we all know who they are. You take the 5-6 biggest brokerage houses, and they said, we're going to do our own. I said, that's not going to work, because that's not what YPY is. It's not about having the biggest and most important names on paper running the show. YPY is for everybody. It is completely open to anybody that wants to join. We're not setting the membership dues so high that only the most successful big businesses can join. This is for everybody, and here's our mission and our vision. And so coincidentally, Monaco did start that other attempt, and we did our thing, and ours worked.
Well, so John, I was going to touch on that because, while we're all in the same industry, hopefully pulling in the same direction for mutual success, you're dealing with different mindsets and cultures. Does YPY able to maintain your cultural identity across these other groups that carry the YPY flag?
Yes and no. I'm fortunate that I've traveled to a lot of countries. I've seen a lot of cultures and met a lot of people. And so I know that very few things does America do the best, or that we can't learn from a different way of doing things. So if we wanted anybody to adapt our adopt it, that we would have to adapt it. And so we were very open to the idea of culturally, if we need to make any changes based on what works best for your customs and your culture, absolutely. I'm not going to die on the hill that it's got to be this rigid. And I mean, especially you consider, YPY Germany, you've got, fortunately here in South Florida, we're all commuting maybe an hour. You got people coming from across Germany to one location for a meeting. So to say, we meet every month, no matter what, these are the rules, well, then we're not going to get attendance. So if we need to meet 6 times a year and have much bigger, more formal gala type events, instead of doing 12, let's adapt to that. And we also had to adapt to the cultures of how easy or difficult it is to set up an association in a given country. It was very quick to set up YPY UK, And it took us a year to get a bank account in YPY UK.
Because of British banking laws and all of that.
Yeah, and it's just, there are complications in each country and culture that you have to be aware of and accepting of. But after we did those first 4, we were kind of off to the races, and then other countries would be calling us to say, hey, how do I do one in Greece? How do I do one in Turkey?
Well, so educate us a little bit, and at the same time, take a little bragging rights. How many chapters of YPY exist right now?
Oh, we should know. 9?
Yeah, I mean, do you want to? We can try to rattle them off. We've got London.
Well, you got DJ there. He's off camera and he can help out too. Right?
Yeah, we'll call in a lifeline. Maybe.
Call in a lifeline. I love that.
We're old enough to know that one at
I
least.
think we have 9. In 2023, we launched Italy and Turkey a few months apart, and we said, you know what, we're growing. This is beautiful, but we're also a bunch of kids with day jobs, and we don't have any board members or paid individuals that can set this up probably the way it should be.
Right.
When we started going international, we needed bylaws. Shoot, we don't have bylaws. Let's write some. But we decided last year to take a little pause and make sure we had all of our ducks in a row before we went any bigger, because anything that is as beautiful as YPY is also fragile. And so we had to be very careful about growing any further before we made sure everyone was on the same page.
That's important. That's important for sure.
Yeah. Rick, this is DJ. If I could jump in,
Absolutely.
I really heard something there from John, and he used the word it would grow organically, internationally, it would happen naturally. And I just want to make the point that it was easy to start YPY South Florida. It was incredibly challenging for John to be able to build that international presence that he built, and that really did fall on his shoulders. And he worked very hard to achieve what he achieved and what YPY therefore has achieved with the international expansion. And I have to say, for me personally, before I skipped town due to a nodule in my esophagus, that was a pretty serious cancer scare at the time. Obviously, you guys know I'm very fortunate and very lucky with the outcome. But, I was the commercial director at IYC, International Yacht Company. And it was a lot of fun for me, thanks to John Jarvie, to have people that were reporting to me in London, like Abby, a retail charter broker at IYC London, who was on the board of YPY, London there. And then all the guys in IYC Greece, had just started up and were on the board of the IYC Greek chapter, and so on and so forth. So that gave me a real thrill.
No, that's really interesting, DJ. I didn't know that. That's kind of how some of that, what I call organic growth, really happened.
Thanks, DJ.
You got it, buddy. Thank you.
So we got everybody's back here for sure. Wow, fascinating. So this, whether I wanted, I guess I'll throw this at you, Katie. Sure. You're the president of the organization now. Next 5-10 years, what's the vision? I mean, you're in a place where you can start kind of putting your vision into play. What do you see happening in the near term and more distant future for YPY?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still interested in growing the membership. We've doubled and tripled over time and size. I think the groundwork that you guys have laid in terms of building an international organization, I think is huge for the membership, because now you can WhatsApp somebody on the other side of the world and, have a contact or a friend or meet up for coffee. And I think it's interesting that, at each of these boat shows, now that we're inviting each of the different memberships to each other. So, you're flying people in from Monaco or Hamburg, and they're coming to Palm Beach. So it's really, I think, exciting that we're linking up better than we ever used to. I think the world after COVID, everybody came more online, and now there's Zoom. So I think the membership is really kind of organically just growing that like at hyper speed themselves. They all want to know like what's happening. So we used to, use the Facebook, and that's not even as active anymore. Now it's like everybody's direct connecting and Instagram. And so now people are knowing what the other chapters are doing. And if they're there for business, they're connecting up with that membership and making those connections. So I think that's something I definitely want to continue facilitating. You put a lot of work. And I learned from John how much effort it takes to get one of these offline. And I think there's so much an interest of other countries that want to then join. So it's almost like that would be the big challenge for the next 5 to 10 years, is almost trying to put the brakes on it to maintain the standards and maintain all of that. But at the same time, make sure that we're, connecting with the markets as the industry grows. So.
Super important. So I want to throw something on the table with all three of you, please. And this is coming from my role that I've had over the last 40 years as an industry guy trying to build up the industry's future. Projections show that between now and 2040, we're going to see the fleet of large yachts double. We're going to face some really interesting challenges as an industry because, look around us. We're here at beautiful Pier 66 in one of their residences. They've just done an amazing renovation and restoration of this iconic facility. And it's a reminder that there are no new waterfronts. We have what we've got. And, where do all these boats go? That's one good question, right? But perhaps more importantly, critically important, is where are the people coming from that are going to dock these boats, crew these boats, run the businesses that service these boats, join the shipyards that will build these boats, the management companies that will manage these boats. I could go right down the list. And the one thing that I believe we as an industry are experiencing right now, and with your own personal businesses, you've probably seen it, is the need for good people, new blood to come in. Does YPY have a role in this?
I'd say absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. It's a very definitive word. Absolutely. We'll start with that because I think it's important as an industry that all the organizations do what they can. But I'd be curious to hear because it is young professionals in yachting, and so we're attracting new blood. I'd be fascinated to know, perhaps with current or future vision, what that could look like or should look like.
DJ, you want to touch on it first before I speak?
Yeah, thank you, John. I think that is already been said in a certain way, but we need to expand a little bit here. Because this association is the home for the young professional, and it is the association that, I just placed maybe 6 months ago, my second or third person to go to work for Burgess. And when Ben Farnborough, as CEO, Dennison and I were talking 3 months ago, he's like, oh yeah, you used to bring people to YCO when he was running YCO for the Americas, right? So, and we've all done it. We've all taken people, we mentioned Maggie, right, who was not in the industry. We brought her in, we brought her up, and now look where she is. And it just keeps happening. The big companies, the good companies come to YPY for good talent. And, that can be existing YPY members, or in many cases, existing YPY members' friends outside of the industry that, want to come in and they find a home in YPY. And frankly, they were brought to the industry because of YPY.
That's important.
Yeah.
I think we also, thanks DJ, I think we also are continually redefining, at least internally within YPY, what our purpose is, because there's a lot that we're missing. We should be engaged at every large international yachting event, symposium, panel. There should be some type of representative somewhere in the day from YPY there. We should be, initially the objective was to nurture those within the industry and to help them grow and perform better in their career. But now there's almost a seemingly responsibility for us, YPY, to also bring those people into the industry. There's this kind of new pressure of, what are you guys going to do about that? Well, that's never been our goal or our mission, but it feels like it should be. And again, being a bunch of people with day jobs, and not to use that as an excuse, but
That's a reality check.
Yeah, that there are a ton of things that we would love to do more of and love to get more involved with, either specifically YPY or as a branch of MIASF running this initiative or whomever. But we recognize that too, but at the same time, that's not our existing objective. Is our job's not to get people in, it's you get them in and we'll keep them here. But perhaps it should be. Because I don't agree with I don't disagree with the issue you're mentioning.
Thank you. Yeah, it's important. It's important at all levels, because if we don't bring new blood in and get them brought up to the levels where we are wanting them to be, it's impossible to expect future success. We've got to feed that food chain of professionals coming into our industry. Next question, and where we'll probably start to wrap up here a little bit, is you're in the YPY, you're really having a great time, you're at these networking parties, you've met your wife, all's good, and your business is growing and going, and then somebody says, oh, by the way, when's your birthday? Oh, I'm 40 years old this year. What happens? Do you guys have a great outgoing ceremony? Is there pomp and circumstance, or is you just kicked to this curb and you're like, okay, thanks very much. It's been great. See you around. What's it like to age out of YPY? John?
Well,
DJ?
Contrary to popular belief, I'm on DJ. By the way, I joined in 2009, so we're a little bit older than 15 years, this organization. But I've been a member since 2009. I just turned 39. Most people think I'm 50 by now for how long I've been attached to this group.
This is some YPY lore here.
I like this.
No one knows that.
Yeah, we're about to break this, right?
But when I was president, we had our first group of people aging out. Actually, Danielle Butler was our first individual who turned 40. She was initially our legal counsel. And I think she was working with MIASF at the time. And we created the Legacy Award, which is a way of putting them on stage saying, you deserve this.
Right.
Not only, it's different if you just paid your dues but never showed up for 5 years, but you're a contributing member, you're a valuable member of this group. We don't want to see you go, we don't want to let you go, but the Legacy Award is kind of a way of, here's your trophy, have a nice day. What happens next, I'm not sure. But we only had a couple of people age out in my term. It's more common now.
And now I think it's evolved. So that was kind of part of the reason. And it really as I was assessing the board and everything like that, and it was something actually talking with DJ when Ben Sorensen at the meeting, I think that was in January, February, was like, hey, I know DJ. And it just dawned on me, it's like we're not connecting enough with the alums that they don't know what we're currently doing. And so I think to bridge that, we're not just booting you out the door, but, capturing the alumni. And it's like any, university where those folks, you may be in college for 4 years, but there's a whole network that still exists. So we're trying to bridge that.
John, I'm going to try to give you some good news here, talk about capturing the alumni. I am dedicated to the proposition. I will make this happen. I'm going to create OPY for the industry so that we can go ahead and take all this talent that's been formed through YPY. We'll give them about a 5 or 10 year break, and starting at about age 50, we'll let you come into OPY, and then you can really finish up the career with a bright, spectacular.
With no age cap.
No, you age out the hard way.
A hard stop.
It's a hard stop for sure. No, this has been a lot of fun. Any final thoughts? I think this is so good getting out. And remember, this is getting out to the international community that, we're picked up on both sides of the pond. So anything that you want to end this conversation with?
I appreciate everyone that's contributed to YPY. It's a lot of work on a board level, and it can be a lot of work just to attend meetings. But like you said, you get out what you put in, and I appreciate all of the efforts from everybody internationally. We couldn't have done anything ourselves with the international growth and all of the international support that we receive from associations and professionals around the world. DJ mentioned a couple of the Fedship gentlemen, and they are huge endorsers of our Dutch chapter and our German and Monaco chapters. And so we couldn't do this without the support of the industry and the countless hours of efforts from all of the board members and members across the world. We're very lucky to have what we have. That's all I'll say about that.
It's wonderful to live in gratitude.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I echo that. I think the whole organization is a volunteer effort, and all of the speakers, everyone, these titans of industry spend their time with us and connect and take it outside of just the member meetings. And I think it's, like you say, really kind of a beautiful thing that it's grown into, and it continues to keep growing. So I have to kind of, try to manage this growing enterprise, but it's a really impressive operation. So thank you to DJ as our founder.
You want to close us out, DJ?
Well, listen, I really want to echo everything that has been said thus far. Living in gratitude is absolutely critical. I want to pick up on that theme of mentorship one last time, because I think that last question that we all just got was how do we give back, right? And we have a responsibility to give back. And I mentioned early on the podcast that, a job I wasn't qualified for, right? And I think that there were a few jobs I wasn't actually qualified for that I got, and I think it was because of my mentor and my relationships and people vouching for me. You know, Rick, you have been an official mentor to Tamara, right?
Yep.
And, you know, I've been an unofficial mentor to her as well. You didn't know that, but I've heard great things from her about your advice and guidance and counsel. And, you know, mentorship is key. And I think, you know, the mentorship committee of YPY is, you know, we can really grow that. And I think we all have a responsibility to give back. So I'm excited to get this message out there. Rick, thank you for having us.
Oh, it's been looking forward to this.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you all for joining Yachting International Radio's Yachting USA. Great voices, great message. I can't wait to crash another YPY party. And until the next time, I guess I'm out of here.